Welcome this week. We're going to welcome in Matthew Claassen with Medigap Seminars. Matthew is considered a leading national expert in Medicare. He's going to be able to break down for you ways to identify where you guys are at, what your options might look like, what's coming at you, some places to go. He's a distinguished member, also with the Forbes Business Councils. We've invited him up here to take that simple message that he uses with his seminars and help us break down our parent projects today. Matthew, thanks for joining us in studio.
Well, thank you, Tony. I appreciate being here.
Oh, we definitely love having an expertise like yours around because this can be some people say drinking from the fire hose. This is like drinking from the hydrant most of the time as we jump into this in the front end. I mean, this is not something most of us choose to want to spend a lot of time with every day.
Oh,
How did you come to just to dedicate your life to it, to be as awesome as you are?
well, so it's been in the financial services business since 1984, and interesting. As the very first company I started working with, was Ferris back in Washington D.C., had a claim to fame of giving seminars. They were the first investment group to give seminars. They'd go off to the HEC stores and other stores and give seminars. So my entire training process in that was 6 months of how to give a good presentation, in addition to others, but it was 6 months of presentation skills. So that's was the first part of my life. And back in 2015, I kind of semi-retired and was trying to figure out what to do. And I had run through circumstances and, both my parents and friends and others who were just people being extremely confused about Medicare. And I kind of looked at the industry and I said, yeah, I can do this. I just created seminars and I started doing seminars to teach people Medicare. And one thing led to another, and now we are one of the largest Medicare boutique specialty agencies in the country. And it's important stuff because it gets confusing, and people are often they're stressed, et cetera. And so we take them through a process, and our motto is to help them make an informed decision and just walk them through the process of what Medicare is, where are the pitfalls, what's the pros and cons of the choices that you have to make, and it eases their stress and helps them to relax, make a good decision, and be comfortable and confident in that decision.
Well, in that approach that you use with the seminars is
Hmm.
it's a very soft approach at that. It's a very consultative approach, which is in a time in which information's bombarding you in sales. Everybody's trying to really sell you something.
Yeah.
It's nice sometimes just to have that approach where they just want to educate you, so you can get your wits about you and make a good decision that's in the best interest of you. Do you find that who's the typical audience that's reaching out? Is it usually mom and dad? Is it often family members with a parent project? Where does that
Well,
usually?
the most often it is people who are turning 65 or turning 67 and retiring, however it is, and they're trying to make sure they make the right decision. But yes, we do get a lot of the adult children who are, they're trying to help their parent out of necessity or desire because it's extremely confusing. And there was a time. It's getting less and less every year, but there was the time that a lot of people weren't as computer literate either, and they're
Mhm.
stumbling over, how do I learn this stuff that's all online, and I'm getting lost and confused, et cetera. And of course, they're having to deal with when people who turn 65 and know that starting about 6 to 8 months before your birthday, you're going to start receiving phone calls, cold calls, mail. I've seen pictures of people's piles of mail. They don't even know where to start with. It's just
Right.
amazing, that they go through. So, that's that whole process of people that turn up to us, or people who want to learn Medicare, and they have to learn Medicare to either for themselves or to help a loved one. And it's what we do. We help them make an informed decision and help to take the stress away. That's why you talk about sales stuff. I don't even hire salespeople. I mean, none of my people have a sales background. They're all people who have something that happened in their life to a family member that makes them want to help others. It gives them the empathy and the compassion.
Yeah.
That's how we approach this. That's what we do, and people know it. That's why there's we get a lot of gratitude online from how we approach all of this.
And I've loved learning that about your business as well, because it's the same approach that we work through, and we call it attraction over promotion, and just from a core of when we're out there helping someone.
Yeah.
When you're looking, when you have an issue like Medicare that is it's ongoing. It's not one of, there are many tasks, there are many
Yeah.
projects that, or parts of our project that get kind of compartmentalized or have a season to up and down. You've got, this is one that goes. Yeah, I mean, it just continues to go. It continues to evolve,
Hmm.
and then it itself is kind of shifting. We'll talk about that. Is there at a baseline, is when you're starting into this, is there a big difference if you're looking at this from the age, if you're learning about this, of trying to make a decision for yourself, or learning about this to make a decision, or to not make a decision but to give advice into an older family member? is there
Hmm.
is there anything, or generally is most of the knowledge you're going to be learning about applicable off of both sides to both age groups?
Well, the knowledge is applicable to both sides. The difference is that when a person is turning 65, they have a clean slate. No matter what their health had been previously, they can make any of the choices that they have available to them. Oftentimes, when we are dealing with the adult child who's trying to help their parent is in the 70s, not just turning 65, and or even older, and some of their, depending on what they did, if they made the wrong choice at
Sure.
first, they may have limited options,
Yeah.
and we still have to work with those limited options, and there's still something we can do. But so yes, it can be very different if the parent has gone in one direction versus the other.
Um,
The very first question, though, that we will get from the adult child is trying to help, is stepping in, is they're trying to figure out what it is their parent has. They
right.
they have no idea, and a lot of times the parent doesn't know either. And so there's a process we do. It's say, listen, first take a look at their cards. If they're showing you a card with an insurance company name on it, and this is what they show the doctor, and it says an HMO or a PPO, then they have what we refer to as Medicare Advantage plans. If they're showing you their red, white, and blue Medicare card and maybe a prescription drug card, then they have what we refer to as original Medicare. And those are two completely different, they both have the word Medicare in them, but they're completely different um, plans, insurances that have different limitations and options to them. And of course, the next step is, if even that becomes confusing, if they should have a mymedicare.gov account that's free, and everybody that's on Medicare can sign up for one. That'll tell you all of that, plus have all of the records of their prescriptions, their doctor visits, everything online. And or they can call Medicare, call 1-800-Medicare and speak to them. But we always say, if you don't have a power of attorney with a health care clause in it, then you'll typically have to call with your parent, and then Medicare will talk to the parent and say, is it okay for me to talk to this person? They get verbal approval, and then you can find out what they have. And that's really the first step in helping a parent. What is it that they
Uh,
have?
and that is a brilliant first jump in from all of that. So if I captured off of that, that is those ID cards, and
Hmm.
that red, white. We've seen those red, white, and blue ones. These other supplements. I'm hoping that we'll at least maybe get a quick synopsis of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H
Yep.
in,
Yep.
but like just of a quick understanding of where those
Yeah.
might fit in when we come back from that. That mymedicare.gov, the 800 Medicare.
Hmm.
Essentially, it's that's assessment. Those become the source information and those best places to start.
Correct.
Okay, awesome. I love that. We're gonna take a knee. We're gonna take our first break off of that. And when we come back, we're gonna learn, maybe dig down, go take a look for one of those cards, maybe pause the episode. Those are the things that you're looking for to work off of that. When we come back, we're gonna continue this conversation with Matthew Claassen as we work through how we can be making Medicare digestible. Stay tuned for the Parent Project Podcast. We'll be back right after. And welcome back. Matthew Claassen today, in from Medigap Seminars, helping us to get through this, making Medicare digestible. Matthew, uh, So once we've been able to grab from the source
Hmm.
an understanding of those ID cards. We've been on my Medicare.gov. We've called the phone number. We've been able to pull that information together. Uh, Now I understand I might have an A or B. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what those are. Can
Okay.
you, at a high level, can you walk us down the alphabet of what the government is throwing at us, please?
Sure. So the two different areas that a person can have is if they're showing you again an insurance company card, you find out what they have is called a Medicare Advantage plan. We'll start with that. The Medicare Advantage plans actually replace Medicare. They are the privatized version of Medicare. So, some people said you can throw away your red, white, and blue card. Please never do that. But you don't need that. You're not going to use that anymore. You're going to have an insurance card from an insurance company, and you'll use that when you go to the doctor. Now, there's some things that you should know if you're trying to actually work with it or help with it. One is that these are plans that have to cover all of the same benefit categories as original Medicare. Even though it's privatized, it's not Medicare. They have to have all the benefit categories. It's not all the same benefits. That is often misunderstood. Um, but the same benefit categories. Then these plans
Can I ask
change.
just a
Yeah.
clarification when you say that? When you say not all the same benefits, you mean it's within the category. It may or may not cover, what one particular type of a procedure, but it's got a category of those procedures. So you're not just
Well,
talking about coverage limits of like cost,
yeah,
how much money, but
it
actually
is.
what is and isn't covered.
Well, it is both. So you're
Okay.
with a Medicare Advantage plan. Your healthcare is controlled by an insurance company who's trying to make money. Okay,
Sure.
so they get to set some limits on your care. Now, I like to use the example of if let's say you need a joint replacement, and the doctor says I need a joint. You need a joint replacement. Well, with a Medicare Advantage plan, you first have to the doctor submits that request to the insurance company. And they can come back first and say, well, instead of doing an operation, give them physical therapy and
Mhm.
see if that works. Okay. Or the doctor might say, well, listen, we need to have physical therapy before a joint replacement to make it stronger so he can recover better, and then physical therapy afterwards. We've got 20 physical therapy sessions we need. They submit that to the insurance company. Insurance company says, well, how about 8? And so you get 8 physical therapy sessions. Um, it's a big difference. I've
Yeah.
talked with people that had, for example, a hip replacement and they limp, and I've had my own hip replacement. And so, well, why do you limp? Well, they talked to them and they didn't have any of those pre-care and post-care, and it impacted them. So the benefit category is, physical therapy or a joint replacement. They both have that. But with original Medicare, we'll talk about in a second, you actually, the doctor doesn't have to get pre-authorization. It's doctor says this is what you need, then that's what you're going to get. So, if you have most Medicare Advantage plans are either an HMO or a PPO.
Hmm.
And in HMO, you usually have a doctor, the primary care doctor, you have to get permission to go see a specialist, has smaller coverage areas, et cetera. PPO, you don't. You can see a specialist as long as they're in network. If they are out of network, another very common misconception with a PPO that you'll hear, well, you can see any doctor that accepts Medicare. It goes back to, it depends on the definition of can. You can ask any doctor, but if they're out of network, they can say no, and they usually do. If they wanted to work with that insurance company, it doesn't cost them anything to get a contract with them. There's a reason they may not want to work with that company, a personal
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
So in either way, you've got a limited network. You have a doctor that has to get pre-authorization. And if you want to go down a real rabbit hole, you can look up. There's just had some major congressional testimonies about the problems of all of this, because we've had in the last 4 years 2 separate what do you call it, inspector general reports on this problem, because the insurance companies use that to delay or deny coverage. So you get the pre-authorizations. Your benefits also change every year. They're calendar year plans, and that means you have to reshop that plan every year. And you've got a window we call the open enrollment, which is October 15th through December 7th. And during that window, you get to see what the next year's plans are and shop for them. And anything can change. Sometimes only a few things, sometimes some major things change. But that's your window of time to shop for a new plan. And if you don't shop, then you've got another period from January 1 through March 31 where you can correct a mistake or make one decision. The advantage or the benefit of an Advantage plan is they have a very low monthly premium, sometimes no monthly premium. And for those that are working, on the edge and they're having economic issues that they're dealing with, that's often the choice that they make. Now they're going to have to pay more when they have healthcare needs, and they can have a maximum out of pocket, set, at $10,000.
Mhm.
It could be in the thousands of dollars, but their premium is low. So, if you have a Medicare Advantage plan, you have to shop every year. You can shop and change plans without any discussion of your health care, your health history. Doesn't matter what it is. You can always shop for a new plan every year and change plans. And you will typically have a prescription drug plan that is bundled within that. So that's a whole other subject, but the prescription drug plan comes with your Advantage plan, and that's the only way you can get it. Now, if you just stayed with original Medicare, that's the red, white, and blue card. If your parent stayed with that, then they have a plan that they can see any doctor, go to any hospital, anywhere in the country, as long as they accept Medicare. The doctors don't have to get pre-approval. They don't send anything up to Medicare. It's if it's medically necessary, it gets done, and it gets covered at the rates that Medicare has. Some of the deductibles and copays change every year, but the benefits never change in that. And then hopefully they've added some sort of a Medicare supplement. The supplement pays those deductibles and those copays. They can still see any doctor, go anywhere in the country. I mean, literally, there's a doctor halfway across the country that will help with whatever rare condition your parent has. You can go. They won't pay for your airfare and your hotel, but your health care is covered. And with a supplement, the benefits never change. So you don't have to shop. In fact, you don't shop every year. It's pretty much the same. The biggest difference is there's a monthly premium. And for some, that monthly premium is a burden. For others, it's not. And you have to have a separate prescription drug plan. It's called a standalone prescription drug plan. And that, like the Advantage plan, you have to shop every year. But you can shop and your prescriptions and lower your prescription costs without any impact on your health care. It's not bundled, so you don't have to choose between one or the other. So you have no network, you have complete freedom, and your doctor and you are the ones who control your health care.
Okay.
And that's the big difference between those two. And if you're new to Medicare, you get to make that choice of which path you're on. If you've chosen a Medicare supplement path with original Medicare, you can always, let's say the premiums get too high, you can always go to a Medicare Advantage plan in a year. But if you go to a Medicare Advantage plan and you want to go back to original Medicare, if you're outside of that initial enrollment period, your first 6 months on Medicare, an insurance company can look at your health history and say, well, you've got critical or chronic illness that's costly and we don't want to insure you, so you can't get a supplement.
Okay.
So that's why we talk about potentially making a permanent mistake. If you go to a supplement, you can always go to an Advantage plan. You go with an Advantage plan, and only if you're healthy can you come and change to a supplement.
So that is, and that speaks back to your earlier comment of you have that clean slate.
Yeah.
You only have that clean slate is it really essentially sounds like it goes one way. It goes out of the Medicare plan. It's you get the clean slate at that age 65 or where you or whenever. By the way, is that the same if you say I have I'm still working and I decide to
Mm-hmm.
work until 67, 68, and I utilize work and it covers all of that. When I do jump into that, coming out of that, do I still have that clean slate the first time that I do come
No,
into the plan then?
it's a good question. As long as the person didn't work and get Medicare, which is
Right, right,
what we
right.
tell people not to do. A lot of people do. They think they have to get Medicare, so they have their employer plan and Medicare. Your clean slate starts when you get Medicare Part B. your Part B is your outpatient services. Your Medicare Part A and Part B are called Original Medicare. So just to be clear, Part A is your inpatient. Whenever you're an inpatient in a hospital or
Hospital, yeah.
nursing, whatever you've got, that's your Part A. Most people, Part A is already paid for because it's paid when you have your payroll taxes. If you or your spouse worked for at least 10 years paying your Medicare tax, then Part A is completely covered. If um, if you haven't worked, then and you have to have been in the country for at least 5 consecutive years. Then you can get Part A, but it's going to cost you a monthly premium. Part B has a monthly premium, and that monthly premium is dependent on your income. Actually, your income as of 2 years ago, and for most people, you'll have the standard rate for Part B. And you have to have, I think right now it's an income over 95,000 individually and 180,000 jointly to start paying more than that standard rate. But the Part B is the one that once you start that, then your initial enrollment period starts. For Medicare supplement, you've got 180 days, 6 months. You've got, and if you change your employer plan, you've got 63 days if you're going to get a Medicare Advantage plan or to get a prescription drug plan. So there's there are so many different enrollment periods. I've got information on my website to go through all of them, but that can be really confusing. Don't assume just because a supplement 6 months, everything else is. In most cases, think of it as your initial enrollment period, which is it's called 7 months around your birthday month. It's your 3 months before your birthday month, 3 months after your birthday month, and your birthday month. And then a Medicare supplement, especially if you've delayed it, like you were talking about, then you're 68, 70, whatever, you get your Medicare Part B. Now that's your initial enrollment period, so to speak, or your special enrollment period, where you have 6 months to get a supplement, or if you want to start an Advantage plan and get a Part D plan, you got 63 days.
Okay. So that makes sense off of that clean slate, and I can understand where those things come through. The supplements you talk about, let's see, and you hadn't used it before, but Medicare Advantage, is that Part C? Is that right?
That
Typically,
is,
or is
yeah,
that
that is part,
right?
it's called Part C. Used to be
Okay.
called Medicare Replacement. That was its original name back in the 80s.
And then just kind of heading down sequentially down here. D is prescription. Is that right?
A D is a standalone prescription drug plan, correct?
Okay. Okay. And how often is that used to both with a C and used to augment what may be covered in an A and B if you're utilizing Medicare? Or is
All
it
right.
is
So
usually
no, so if you have an Advantage plan, then the Advantage plan is supposed to have the A and B services.
yeah,
There are Advantage plans that don't come with a Part D plan, but there's almost 90% of them do. And you can't get a
got it.
standalone Part D plan with an HMO or a PPO Advantage plan. So if you have that, you get one that's bundled in there. It's still separate. And what's
Sure.
important to understand there, so if your Advantage plan says, well, you have a maximum out of pocket of $5,000, that doesn't include the Part D portion. That only includes your inpatient or outpatient services, and only if you know, follow the rules of the Advantage plan. So if the Advantage plan says, well, we're not going to approve this service, and I've had people call me that had needed organ transplants literally, and Advantage plan would deny it to make them fight for it.
Yeah.
And if they went ahead and got it anyway, then it wouldn't be covered at all. So we have to go through an appeals process to get that covered.
Well, I think that's one place, and I imagine you hear it where families will get tripped up in understanding. They're trying to forecast without how much cash is going to come out, and a lot of it
Hmm.
gets missed in that. Well, what is max out? Well, thought this was a max out of pocket, but it didn't include maybe what we see
Well,
coming out of pocket here and this over.
and it's one of the other reasons that I prefer a supplement if a person can have one. So with the
Yeah,
most coverage you can get if you're new to Medicare today is a Plan G and Original Medicare. And with that, your maximum out of pocket for inpatient and outpatient services, $226. That's it. You pay that, that's your Part B deductible. You pay that, everything's covered 100%. Your doctor, doesn't have to ask permission to, get you a surgery or a, physical therapy or whatever else you need. In addition, if it also includes things we call Part B drugs. So you think of a prescription drug plan, Part D as your drugs, but that's only the drugs where your doctor writes a script and you'll either get it on a monthly basis or pick it up at a pharmacy. Your Part A, inpatient services, covers all the drugs that you have when you are an inpatient,
Okay.
and your Part B includes any of the prescriptions that you would get that are administered by a medical professional at a medical facility. Includes a lot of infusions. It
Right.
includes, many of the shots that people will get that they don't want to give themselves. Some things could be one or the other, and we get that a lot with osteoporosis and osteopenia. I think it's called Prolia, if I remember correctly. A lot of doctors will say, here, you can, take this at home. Well, it's only $30,000. Um,
Right.
yeah, if you have a Medicare Advantage plan, then you're going to pay 20% of it up to the maximum out of pocket. If
Yeah.
you have original Medicare and a supplement, then it's paid for.
Okay.
You don't have to worry about it. So, and that's when we talk about the choices. And once you know which one you have, if your parent has a Medicare supplement, your only concern at that point and is, it's but no matter what their health is pretty much what's the premium going to be.
Yeah.
And even if the premiums go up, it saves everybody involved the expenses of medical care. It's just you're not going to have this, surprise $20,000 bill. If you have an Advantage plan, and we do get this a lot, people say, well, Advantage plan has, and I'm just going to use 5,000 as a round number, $5,000 maximum out of pocket. How come I spent $30,000 this year? Well, it's because you were denied services that you got anyway. It doesn't cover that. So if you're denied a service, you have to go through an appeals process. Now, statistically, 80% of all appeals are successful on the first try, and another 10% are successful on the second try, because it's a delaying tactic. Is all it is.
Sure it is. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not a complicated process. It's just frustrating because you're being kicked when you're down, so to speak. And a person who's going through something medically is not necessarily in the best position to want to fight for approval. We had one case, and a woman, and again, this was actually the daughter helping the mother, and the mother needed surgery on her sinuses. I don't know what it was, but she could not breathe through her sinuses. Insurance company wrote back in so many words saying that breathing through your sinuses is not medically necessary. Always breathe through your mouth. And I laugh about
Wow.
it, but that is literally what they come
Yeah.
up with, because that's all they have to do is say, this isn't medically necessary. We don't have to cover it.
Yeah.
And so we walked them through the appeals process. We're not attorneys. We can't do it for them, but we show
Right.
them how, so that it's,
Right.
this is really easy to do. Here, you do it. On the first appeal, she got everything so the parent got the surgery and had that corrected and can breathe again.
Well, and those are, I think you pointed out that this isn't, it's not nefarious to understand that insurance companies are insurance companies, and if that's where you're going
Hmm.
to, they're there to make money, to hedge risk, and so if they can delay, or to see really how badly do you want that one thing, especially in a medical marketplace that is quick to just start throwing stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
They've at some point in time they've got to build in some level of protections to make people go, take a breath, and from that side, take a breath, make sure this is really what you want. Now, on that particular case, that's very interesting. And what the block, just do it through your mouth, not through your nose.
Yeah.
but but you can, I can kind of understand where that comes about. It doesn't make it easier in that moment, especially because typically those you feel like those decisions have to be made very, very quickly. The doctor's
Hmm.
offices will push on you, the medical specialists will push on you, your heart's pushing on you to kind of work that thing out, and you have to work through that. Is there generally a guideline for how long an appeals process or something, is that a couple of week thing? Is that a couple of month thing? Just at high level?
You're typically looking at 30 to 60 days that you have to respond with an appeal, and
Yeah,
you have to have certain paperwork. And the insurance company is required to give you that paperwork. They don't always do that. So we tell people if there's something like that that gets denied, the first thing you do, our clients do is call us, because then we will make sure you get the right paperwork, make sure you get everything you need and get it through that process as quickly as possible
yeah,
to get it started. It's the people that, unfortunately, is a Medicare statistic that over 90% of the people had no idea they even could appeal, because they don't get a letter that says you can appeal this. And so they don't know what to do, and they put it off and sit around, and that time period, passes, in which case they
yeah.
kind of have to start all over again.
Or they go back in to see that doctor 4 months later who's like, you could appeal that and that will, come through. Or yeah, you just have to show them this document that says we tried this medication at this level, it didn't work. This is the next level of
Yeah.
medication I'm asking for.
Yeah, now
And show
medications are
that, right?
different, and those are actually easier appeals, but what you just referred to was step therapy, and that's very common for expensive prescriptions, and some of these have
Yeah.
gotten to be ridiculously expensive. And the Part D plans though have gotten actually better over the years. They're doing a lot. There's even coming up with now in 2024 there will be what we call a soft maximum out of pocket of about 3,300, depends on what type of drugs you have. And then in 2025 there will be a fixed maximum out of pocket on your prescription drug plans of $2,000. All the years behind us had no maximum out of pocket.
Yeah.
And could be
Yeah.
devastating if you have, cancer and stuff. And Medicare's, they're paying 95% of your drugs after you've had a certain amount out of pocket. But the average cancer drug's over $10,000 a month. And, having a $500 a month for, if you get certain cancers, you have to take that the rest of your life. That's a big expense.
Right. Well, and you look to understand, again, an importance in probably looking at this, which we'll strike in a bit, annually shopping that and looking at that. It's tend to find these things are like a water better. So you can push down into one area and it's going to pop up
Hmm.
someplace else, right? If there's a limit in one place, you're just going to have to kind of continue to look back and understand how that change comes to. So I look forward to hear how
Yeah.
you think we do that.
Well, the worst case, no matter what you do, if you reshop, that's easy to do. Whether you're doing let's say a prescription drug plan, I've got a process I use. I have a website called partdshopper.com, and you can put in your prescriptions and which pharmacy you like to use, and it'll list out the drug companies that I recommend with the lowest one on top, and you pick that, because all the drug companies have to cover at least two drugs from every category, and then they have to cover substantially all the drugs from the six protected categories, which includes cancer and immunosuppressants and such. So it's not like you're going to have a plan that doesn't cover what you need, but what you don't know is what is it going to cost, and
Yeah.
it that depends on what contracts that particular insurance company has with the different manufacturers. And that's why shopping every year, you say, okay, these are my prescriptions, who's going to give me the lowest cost on those? And that's really easy to do with a standalone. With Medicare Advantage plan, you sometimes have to balance the ones that have your doctors in network versus the ones that are not going to overcharge you on your drugs, and or change doctors.
Yeah.
So
Well, and these are not unlike what we can be doing and should be doing with our own coverage, medical insurance coverage. I think even if your
yeah.
work provides you one when you're younger from that, I think one thing you and I have talked about before is you really have to change an outlook after retirement in how you look, how you set yourself up for your expenses, how you plan for those things fiscally and
Hmm.
financially. I think you see perhaps when you're younger and when it's covered by your employer, it's the oopses that come through it eats more into that expendable income, but there's a significant amount of income that's starting to come in from that. And it kind of covers over.
Yeah.
You can get into a bad habit of not looking at those things and just kind of sucking that up. And then, especially if you're in an employer that's changing plans routinely, once you figured it out, the next year it's going to change to
Hmm.
something else that gets thrown at you. But when you get into this again, I know we're going to touch this here in just a bit about shopping that plan even deeper. this is it can really matter, particularly helping a loved one, to make sure that you're staying up on those changes that are going to come at them for the next year. When
Yes.
you talked about that window, that October 15th to December 7th, during that point in time, I would take it that at the beginning of that is when we will begin receiving. We receive, if I, for whatever, let's say I'm either whether you're pure, that pure play Part A and B working with Medicare, or I'm on a Medicare Advantage plan and a Part C kind of Medicare Advantage
Hmm.
plan. Will I get that in October, or right at the beginning of that time period and window to
Yes.
begin looking at that, or about when does that information come in?
So the insurance companies are required to give you a statement of change about October 1. It's usually within the first couple
Oh, okay,
days of
great,
October.
right,
And that gives you a couple weeks to look at it, and then you may even on Medicare.gov or some other sites see some of the plans and their changes, and we can see everything on October 1, but we can't do anything about it until October 15th, and which is good
okay,
though. It gives us time to look, to study, to research, and by the time things start where you can make a change, then we've had time to look at it, whether it be your prescription drug or your Medicare Advantage or whatever. And the only issue I have with that is it's always during the holidays, during
yeah.
Thanksgiving and holding up to Christmas and stuff, and that's hard for some people, yeah, especially around Thanksgiving. They don't exactly want to be thinking about their Medicare at that point.
All right. Well, it does in a case of a parent project, it might give you that opportunity when you're in person to ask what questions they are, be
Hmm.
able to assess what your parents' capability is of understanding where they're at and what that plan
Yeah.
looks like and how to walk their way through it. Maybe even ask some of those questions if there was something that they were aware of that didn't get covered, or if there was that bill that popped out that they weren't expecting, to identify if there was an appeals opportunity or something there to walk them through. Those
Yeah.
become some of those moments to have those conversations. That's awesome insight from you. So you talked some of these supplemental, these F, the G, the supplemental type stuff that sits out
Hmm.
there. Medigap. Tell me
Right.
about that term. When we hear this Medigap, is that
Oh.
just another way for a
Yep.
supplemental policy?
Yeah, it's the exact same thing. A Medigap and a Medicare supplement are the same thing, and
Okay.
you'll find Uh, thus in the industry, we usually refer to them as Medicare supplement, but when you get online at Medicare, they usually refer to them as Medigap, and they're paying the gaps in Medicare, the deductibles, the co-insurance. Medicare Part B, we mentioned, is your outpatient services, and that is typically after a $226 deductible, your Medicare is going to pay 80%, you pay 20%. Well, the
Yeah.
Medicare supplement will pay that 20% for you. Or Medicare Part A has a per event deductible of about $1,600. Your supplement will pay that for you, so you don't have to do that. Matter of fact, with the almost all the supplements, you can be in a hospital for a year and it won't cost you a dime as an inpatient.
No.
So, but yeah, Medicare supplements. There are 10 Medicare supplements available, but the vast majority of plans are of one of three. And by vast majority, over 90% are one of three plans. It's either the Plan G, and yes, they are creative names. They just stick a letter in there. That's the plan.
Yeah.
But a Plan G covers everything for inpatient and outpatient. So they only cover what Medicare covers. So, a
Like,
supplement doesn't, it's not, Medicare doesn't cover dental services. So your supplement's not going to cover dental services. Just that if Medicare covers something, then the supplement has to pay the deductible or copay or whatever is associated with that. You never have to worry about does your doctor, so you have a supplement will come from an insurance company, but you never have to worry about if your doctor accepts that insurance company because your doctor doesn't bill them. They bill Medicare. Medicare pays its portion, sends an electronic message to the supplement. Nowadays, about 85% of those bills are paid within 48 hours electronically without any human intervention. The others are typically paid within a week or so. And the Plan G covers everything except for that $226 Part B deductible.
It,
Um,
and then there's a I understand with like an H or a G, an H is easier, or just about everybody can qualify for it, or something to that nature, versus a G that might be more difficult. Or what's the difference when you're looking between those types of?
well, yeah, there are no supplements that everybody can qualify for at any time. Okay.
Okay.
There
Good to know.
are there are different ones that they'll have a different price to them and have different benefits.
Okay.
So example, the second most popular is the Plan N. So like the Plan G, it covers 100% of your inpatients. You never have to worry about an inpatient bill. You also have to pay that $226 deductible, just like with Plan G. But with the Plan N, you will also have a $20 copay when you ever have an office visit. That's going to include, nowadays it includes telehealth visits. It can include an urgent care visit. It's most doctor visits. It doesn't. It's a visit where a doctor is either diagnosing or evaluating you. So physical therapy should not have a copay to it, but it's a $20. It can be no more than $20.
And are you saying M as in Mary or N as in
Oh,
Nora?
I'm sorry. N is in Nora or November.
N as in Nora. Yep. Great.
Okay. It's the second most popular plan. It is gaining in popularity because it is a lot lower in price than a Plan G and a lot more stable in price than a Plan G is. And so it's a very popular plan. It is. We always look and compare it. Let people take a look at the plans available to them. Let them compare, make the decision which one fits their budget and their needs. There are the third one that's most popular is a high deductible. So your Plan G has a high deductible version. So does the Plan F. And it's the same plan, even though they have different, G and F high deductible are exact same plan. And in essence, so your Medicare is still going to pay its portion. You go to the doctor, you pay the Part B deductible. After the deductible, Medicare pays 80%, you pay 20%. It just puts a maximum out of pocket of $2,700. And that's after that, you have 100% coverage. But you're usually looking at a premium that's well under $100, depending on the state. Prices on supplements vary wildly by state and even within a state. And so could be $40 for a high deductible plan, could be 90 for a high deductible plan, depending on where you are. But the bottom line is it's a way of having something better than an Advantage plan because you've got a low maximum out of pocket. You the freedom to see any doctor you want. Your doctor isn't handcuffed or handicapped by anything without having a larger out of pocket for a premium. So.
Those are one of the top things where families tend to start pushing out are those diagnoses of like a dementia or where there's going to be a reduced capacity long term. Is that in particular, since we've seen an explosion of that, it seems to be
Mm-hmm.
in the United States today. Does that come into do things like that at that level? Is that something that might come into play when you're working through a decision like this?
Well, so that is why one of my philosophies I preach in my seminars is you get today the insurance that you'll want to have when you're sick or injured. Because once you have a condition like that with Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, one that's showing an ongoing chronic condition and ongoing costs, if you don't already have a Medicare supplement, you can't get one. However, the Medicare Advantage plans are changing and improving to such a degree. There are now special needs plans for certain chronic conditions like diabetes and heart conditions, and there'll be more introduced with for Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, et cetera, that Medicare Advantage plans that are designed for that. So you have a better drug plan for that specific condition and a better structure of the plan to keep your costs down and make sure they get the care that they need. So it's one of the good things about Advantage plans is if you miss the supplement, these Advantage plans are changing and every year are getting into better and better to help people with those special needs.
With those special, that's fantastic. That's great to know to be on the lookout for. Um, and I think we'll circle back around the best way to get visibility on all that. I think also in
Hmm.
along with our shopping of annually. I think that leaves the last letter I'm trying to tick off on my little checklist is an H. What what is a plan H?
I don't know that there is one.
Okay, great.
You know,
Okay.
there were different lettered plans, but many of them were discontinued back in
Okay,
2010 when Medicare supplements were call them modernized. They were changed and improved.
got it.
Um, so
So these letters that we use, is that an antiquated form, or are they still being used kind of regular. I noticed when you let off, you didn't use those originally. Is that something we would expect to get worked out of the system, or is that still part
Yeah,
of the
that's
vernacular?
so one good way to confuse people is throw terms they don't know. And Medicare does a good job of this by saying, A, why don't they just say inpatient care? B, why not outpatient? And the problem is that there's also a Medicare supplement Part A, a Medicare supplement Part B, a Medicare supplement Part D that have nothing to do with, Medicare,
Yeah,
or
with Medicare, right?
yeah, and it
Yeah,
can be very confusing. So we don't normally throw all of those out until we talk about the concepts of the plan. And then, we got tables there, we've got online, we have all sorts of resources where you can see each of the ones that are available and what their benefits are. It's, but the vast majority of people that are um, on a supplement plan, we'll stick with some of those. There's the F, which covers 100% of everything, but you could only
yeah,
get it if you're qualified for Medicare prior to 2020. G covers everything but that Part B premium. N has other little things that you have to watch out for, but it's very easy to manage, very low cost, and more than anything else, it's very stable price wise.
yeah. So, okay, we're gonna take one more break here. This front side, in that quick recap from it, we've seen where to start. What are the first documents you are pulling together in understanding what that Medicare picture might look like? And I think one of the key things we've really talked about here is being able to understand and select the plan that you're going to need when you need it. And so doing that by discussing what those needs are, what don't get tied up into the letters and off of the terminology from that. Just work through what you think the situation is at that point in time. When we come back with Matthew Claassen, we're going to be talking and digging down into how do you shop these plans. Now you know what you think you're going to need into the next year. How do you shop this annually? How do you do this in a way that is safe for a loved one? That how can we reduce some of that risk, especially if it has to do with being online and some of those things. And then what are some of those key circumstances that might change within a year that could influence us? Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this and Making Medicare Digestible with Matthew Claassen on the Parent Projects podcast. And welcome back. Today we're talking about making Medicare digestible with Matthew Claassen. Matthew, thanks again for joining us and helping us break down and even drink out of a fire hydrant. You're doing a phenomenal job, by the way.
Well, yeah, it's hopefully no one feels like they're drinking out of a fire hydrant. That's it's
Oh,
not a
I
good
well, I
thing.
think when you just look at the whole thing, this is one of those easy things that you look at and you're like, tomorrow. Right? Or,
Yeah, exactly.
and unfortunately, many of us probably got many, many years of experience with that with taxes. So, yeah, maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah.
But this is one of those things that really gets at you, and it's dynamic. It changes every year. You brought up a couple of times now, and we've had conversations about the importance of looking at this every single year, and being able
Mhm.
to shop this. Shopping a plan annually. What does that look like? What do we need to know about that?
Well, there are a couple avenues people can take, and Medicare has done a better job each year of allowing people or giving people the opportunity to get online and shop for certain
Mhm.
plans. Prescription drug plans are pretty easy. And again, I have the Part D shopper.com website. They're the companies that, not all the companies that are available, just the ones that I prefer to work with. And if you're going to shop, so the online is one way. Now, what we encourage people to do, obviously, is to call us, as we have a software system that's probably some of the most sophisticated software in the industry, where we'll collect a person's, who are their doctors, which one is their primary, who are the specialists that they see. We'll collect the prescriptions that they're currently taking, and then you sit down with them, and the software spits out is all of the insurance plans that are available to them that are, like the advantage plans where the doctors are in network, and you can see what they cost. You can also say, well, is it, going to be which one has lower costs for the prescriptions, and then which ones, some of them have deductibles, some of them have different copays and all of that. And we can go through all of those changes. So instead of somebody calling all the different insurance companies, we have it there together. The prescription drug plan is the same thing, except it's done online, and most people don't even need our need our help with that. We're there to help them, but it's a very simple process. But if you can't do it online, and we'll get this on occasion, we'll have people that'll have a lot of medications. I mean, sadly, 15, 20 medications. And so there's something called the Medicare Blue button now, where whether it's through our software or whatever we have, we can through this blue button import all of their medications, all of their doctors, everything into our system. So we don't have, no one has to manually type it. The person who's trying to help doesn't have to take all these prescriptions out and see which ones they have, et cetera. It's all automated at this point. Only thing we do is make sure there's not something in there that they aren't taking anymore or that the prescription's changed. And we can go through all of those plans. Now, one of people may not be aware, our services are free to the consumer. We don't cost anything. That we can work with any of the major insurance companies and all the supplement plans, and just whatever is right for the person, the insurance company is going to pay us, and they pay us the same regardless. So all we're trying to do is get somebody into the process and take something that could take days and many, many hours on their own and take it down to a very simple process and be done in 30 minutes in many cases. Just remember, with a supplement, you don't have to shop every year because the benefits never change. So you can just keep that for as long as you can afford the premium. No one can change it. No one can take it away from you. Prescription drugs and Medicare Advantage plans have to be reshopped every year. And just a quick story, there's a gentleman about 4 years ago, I remember is helping him with his prescription drug plans. Already got a supplement for him, and he was 70 something, so he'd been on Medicare for a while. He didn't have a lot of drugs, but he kept telling me he was spending $12,000 a year on his prescriptions. And the reason was he never reshopped his plan, and the benefits and prices change every year. So if you keep on the same plan, you can end up, in this case, he's paying $12,000. I went shop for him, brought him down to about $1,800 a year for that, and he started crying. And I was like, don't cry, it's okay. And he goes, no, you don't understand. I can afford to see my grandchildren now. You
Huge
know,
difference. Yeah.
huge difference in quality of life, and that's why we make sure now that everybody is reminded to reshop your plan, because once January comes and you've not shopped your prescription drug plan, there isn't anything you can do about it.
So, talk to me just or adding into that. You did talk about a January to March 31st for corrections to be made. Can you clarify
Yeah,
what that section is for? That timeline's
yeah,
used for?
that is referred to as a Medicare Advantage open enrollment. So you can make one change in Advantage plans. It's not uncommon for the websites of the insurance companies to not be up to speed. So you think your doctor's in network, you find out in January that they're not, or they canceled their
Mhm.
contract, et cetera. So you can make one change, any change you want with your Advantage plan, or you can go from an Advantage plan back to original Medicare and get a prescription drug plan. You cannot change prescription drug plans during that part. And there's a big movement within our industry to add that because it's needed. Insurance companies have quickly learned that since you can't change plans, that their price increases all occur in January after you've made your choice. So that'll happen in the years ahead. They're improving that literally on a yearly basis. But for right now, that enrollment period is, if you've made it, if you don't like your Advantage plan, you can get a different one or go back to original Medicare. You can apply for a supplement. If you don't have any major health history, you can get one.
Mhm.
And you can apply for a prescription drug plan.
Okay, that is incredibly well laid out. What outside of those corrections that come from that, are there any other major things that could happen in the course of the year, or anything else that comes up, or that's the window, that's where it is, that's actually pretty hard and fast? There's not, and
You
I'm
know,
thinking big stuff like loss of a spouse, right? Or a mate. Well,
it's
I
a
don't know
good
what I don't know.
question.
Yeah.
So there's there are what we call guarantee issue periods.
Okay.
Medicare Advantage plans are local coverage. So let's say that you're parent moves, they're in a different state and they move in with you. Well, then they have a guarantee issue. It's a 63-day period from the day that they moved or the day that they tell Social Security they moved. And they can get certain supplements, maybe an F or a G, depending on their situation when they started Medicare, and a D, not a Medicare Part D, but they can do that too, but a Medicare Supplement Plan D. And but they have a guarantee issue where they can get certain Medicare supplement plans without any health questions asked,
Hmm.
or they can change Medicare Advantage plans and get a local Medicare Advantage plan or get a local prescription drug plan. So that's very important. You have a very short window of time to do that when you move, but the key is that it's when you tell Social Security you moved, and they've changed that rule here recently to make it easier to work with. There are other guarantee issue plans. If your Medicare Advantage plan closes, that happens on occasion, you have a guarantee issue to get another one. If you started Medicare on a Medicare Advantage plan, you've got a whole 1-year trial right period where you can go to a supplement. And so your whole first year on Medicare, you can change your mind and get a supplement if you want to. And there's on and on and on. There's a lot of guarantee issues. There are some states like California that have, a host of guarantee issues. There are other states that have guarantee issue periods. There are other states that have, and growing every year, will have periods of time around your birthday or around the anniversary of a Medicare supplement policy where you can change supplements without any health questions. And there are some states where it's perpetual. New York, Connecticut, for example, you can get a supplement anytime without ever answering any health questions. So all of that, those state rules, hard to believe I'm actually familiar with them all because they keep changing.
Right.
But
Right.
those are things you want to speak to an expert about. What state rules, um, there was a period once where a person, again, it just happened to be I think pretty much shows that the daughter and the uh, parent was living in Texas and he had cancer and he was on an Advantage plan. Cancer can be very expensive on an Advantage plan. They're only going to cover 80% and you're going to pay the 20% up to the maximum out of pocket. So the parent moved to California. In doing so, they got a guarantee issue period. We got them a Plan F, so everything is covered 100%. And as I was speaking to him with California, if that Plan F gets to be too expensive during his birthday period in any year, he can move down to a Plan N if you want it, or a G or whatever else to lower the premium cost.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was a win-win situation. They don't have the expenses of cancer. They get their supplement and they're in a state where they can lower that supplement cost every year. But, if as long as it's available.
And those are, again, so you're making that big point that it is state by state. So
Yes.
if you've got a parent project that you identify is going to have a state to state push, or there's going to be an element mom and dad are going to move from one state maybe to be closer, or whatever that reason might be,
Mm-hmm.
um, then it is important to get in front of that again and thinking about the plan you're going to need instead of necessarily what you necessarily need at the moment.
Exactly. And we,
Yeah.
we work with that. And the one thing I'll add to that is the way the rules work, it's the intent of moving. You don't have to move and get your residency at that state. Some states, in South Dakota, you can drive an RV in and stay overnight and, be a state resident.
Mm.
Other states, you've got to stay there for 6 months. Well, that's nothing to do with Medicare. With Medicare, they've stated, as long as you have the intent to move, an intent to move shows that you've got an address that you're going to move to, whether it be your own house or a relative's house, then you can start planning your Medicare and changing your Medicare towards that.
Interesting. Okay. Really, really fascinating on that. Um, any other major significant things that you can think of off of the top of your head from that? That is,
Well, we often get questions on, what does Medicare cover? And
yeah.
I've got 50, 60 articles on my website on all the different things that Medicare covers. And the most important thing to think, if it is original Medicare, the intent is to cover everything that's medically necessary. Now, there are some things it doesn't cover very well, like wheelchairs are not going to pay, 100% of your wheelchair or your walker and all those, the medical devices, um, et cetera. But again, with the supplement, it's going to be pretty much covered.
Yeah.
But it's important because, some people will stop and say, well, what if I get this to happen to me or that to happen, or my parent goes through and gets this condition or that condition. If it's original Medicare, it's supposed to cover whatever is medically necessary. Hospice care is covered at 100%. There's home health care if they are confined to their home physically. It's not a choice. I mean, it's if they can't leave their home, then Medicare is going to cover for home health care. They don't just cover if the person's only problem is they can't keep up with their activities of daily living.
Right.
There has to be a condition or a disease or something to that nature that's keeping them in the home.
Well, those are tell us now, since you have brought up, and we love to highlight you. Where can people find you? Where can they find your website? Where can they find more with you guys?
Well, the website is medicapseminars.org.
Great.
There's a host of videos. We also have a YouTube channel, medicapseminars.org YouTube channel. The videos are both on our website and on YouTube. On the website, you've got a search button, and you can search for almost anything that it covers. It'll pull up the article on it. We've got calculators on there, to determine initial enrollment periods or supplement enrollment periods, or comparing an employer plan to Medicare, all those calculators that are on there. And what will happen very shortly here, this is within the next 2 weeks, is there's going to be a pop-up where you have a free Medicare mini course. And so I've taken some of my videos and just, kept them down to short 10-minute videos to walk a person through learning about Medicare in 4, 10 to 12-minute videos. So all of that is there. It's a site. Medicapseminars.org is there to help people learn without any stress, without any pressure, on their own time, and it's become quite popular because of that.
And we love it. Why don't you throw out too, if you would, for me, please, the phone number you had mentioned that for people to give you a call from time to time. What's a good phone number for you guys?
Let's see, 800-847-9680. I almost had a brain freeze there. It just threw me off.
No, no worries, no worries. So awesome. Glad to have it in there. Matthew, it's really been great to have you here. Appreciate
Thank
you
you. I
coming
really
on.
appreciate it.
Yeah, it's in breaking this down for us, helping us really digest Medicare. I think you did an excellent job, by the way, of locking that
Good.
down and just getting us started against what that is. Again, if you're joining us from whatever state you are, it does vary from state to state. So make sure that you check in with professionals for your state to understand that. Happy to have you got medigapseminars.org, or at that phone number we showed down below, and we'll also put some information down below in the show notes to be able to find you, Matthew, in your
Great.
group down there.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again for joining us and for sharing your time, talents, and treasures.
You're welcome.
Well, that's it for the team this week, and thanks for joining us. If you've enjoyed the content, remember to subscribe and to share this episode on the app that you're using right now. Your reviews and your comments, they really help us expand our reach as well as our perspective. So if you have time, also drop us a note. Let us know how we're doing. For tips and tools to clarify your parent project, simplify communication with your stakeholders, and verify the professionals that you choose, you can find us on YouTube, follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Thanks again for trusting us. Until our next episode, behold and be held.
Thank you for listening to this Parent Projects podcast production. To access our show notes, resources, or forums, join us on your favorite social media platform or go to parentprojects.com. This show is for informational and educational purposes only. Before making any decisions, consult a professional credentialed in your local area. This show is copyrighted by Family Media and Technology Group Incorporated and Parent Projects LLC. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcast.